Hey, good morning, it's Owen Bigland. This is the Inside Edge video blog. About a month ago I did a video blog on advising people to start filtering who they're listening to, and that there is an awful lot of bad and misinformation out there from a lot of anonymous bloggers. I advise people to look for people with transparency, people that have a proven track record of success and walk the walk and talk the talk, as opposed to an anonymous blogger, because there is a lot of bad advice and information out there right now. Prime example of it would be last month. I was watching BNN, the Business News Network, and in the afternoon show they brought in an author who had a new book, and he came in. The new book he had written was called The Wealthy Renter, and it was that age-old formula where in today's ultra-high real estate prices in Toronto and Vancouver, it makes a lot more sense in the long term to rent and save the difference, even though there isn't any difference to save. I'll get to that in a minute. And it's a much better way to go. Why would you pay $500,000 for a one-bedroom condo today and be a slave to a mortgage for the next 25 years? Now, unfortunately for this author, his premise is completely flawed, and unfortunately for him, he stepped into a bit of a hornet's nest when he went on to BNN. The host peppered him with some pretty good questions, I thought, that the author just stumbled and bumbled around and did not have the answers for. It was actually quite funny to watch. You could probably go on to BNN and search it. The Wealthy Renter was the name of this author. You should go on for yourself and see how this guy handled himself. But this is a prime example of bad information by what I would call an opportunist. Meaning that when the markets get high like this, the prices are at all-time record highs for Vancouver and Toronto, out come these opportunists with an alternative. Unfortunately, this guy's alternative doesn't hold any water. It might have back in the 80s, when interest rates were at 18%, and rents in Vancouver and in Richmond were fairly inexpensive. I know firsthand because I've been a landlord for over 25 years, so I know what I was getting for rents back then compared to what I'm getting for rents now on my properties. So back then, the old premise, when you could rent an apartment for $300 or $350 a month, but to buy a place and hold a mortgage was going to cost you $600 or $700. Yeah, there was a difference there. You could take that $300 or $400, put it into a basket of Canadian dividend stocks, and maybe if you were diligent about it, you could maybe come out ahead. Diligent meaning that you had to be incredibly disciplined putting that money away. But of course, most people would save the rent and spend the difference as opposed to investing the difference. But the host on BNN hit him with some hard-hitting questions. And this is the thing that a lot of people don't talk about when they get into renting versus owning. And I blogged about it in past videos. The first thing is leverage. It's the magic of real estate. Leverage is how most wealth is created in this world. If you looked at 100 millionaires or multimillionaires, I can tell you that 95% of them will have attained a good portion of their wealth by buying and holding real estate. The reason being is that they could buy a $500,000 condo for as little as 5 to 20% down, take possession of that asset, and rent it out. The other thing that they don't talk about here is if you're buying your principal residence, it's all the capital gains is completely free and clear to you when you sell the property. It's something that they omit, being a long-term renter versus being a long-term homeowner. The amount of money you can shelter, it's the only capital gains tax shelter we have. It's the only one. The RRSP is great. I max it out. But when it comes time to draw that money out of your RRSP, you're going to be fully taxed on it. You buy a $1 million home today, and in 25 years it's worth $3 million. That $2 million is going to come out to you completely free and clear. Try doing that in an RRSP. The other thing that they don't talk about, of course, is the interest rates today. You can lock in a 5-year rate at about 2.3%. So the difference between renting and owning, there is no savings there. The final thing that they never mention, and this author stumbled and bumbled around, they always throw out some sort of a weird rental chart that comes out from Canadian Mortgage and Housing. And I did a blog on this a couple of years ago about a guy that was commenting in my YouTube blog on one of my blogs about how it makes no sense whatsoever to be a long-term renter, because the difference between renting and owning is the same, yet you're building up all that equity and all that capital gain by owning. The hard part is getting the down payment. Once you've got that, you're far better off owning. It's not even close. Interest rates would have to get up to 10 or 12% before we'd even get the conversation going. But on the rental thing, they always throw out some weird graph. The guy had some chart that he showed me that shows you could rent a typical one-bedroom condo in Vancouver for around $1,100 or $1,200 a month. I don't know where that is. I'll give you the straight facts right now. I own lots of rental properties in Vancouver. On a typical one-bedroom now, I'm getting $2,100 to $2,200 a month for Gastown, Crosstown, Yaletown. I can tell you that the rent increases in the last 5 years are unprecedented. For units that I was getting $1,700 a month for 4 or 5 years ago, I'm now getting $2,100, $2,250 a month for. In Richmond, for units 5 years ago I was getting $700 a month for, I'm now getting $1,100 a month for. So rents are not cheap anymore. So the final thing on this BNN interview that I had to laugh at, the guy was flustering, the host was hitting him with questions about leverage and how rents are expensive and where is the difference in savings, and he stumbled and bumbled around. The final nail in the guy's coffin was the host, when they signed off, I gotta ask him. He asked the author point blank, do you own or do you rent? He kind of hesitated. He owned. Of course he owned. This guy is an opportunist, folks. It's just a way to sell a few books by people that might be disenfranchised with the current prices, and maybe, hey, renting is the way to go. It's not. In the book I've got coming out in the new year, I do have a chapter on renting versus owning. And what I'm going to do what I do in my book is I don't sugarcoat it with basic, with rental stats on what you can rent a home for versus what you can buy. I give real life examples of units that I own that I've got rented out and what I'm getting for rent. And then I also back it up with some recent purchases that I've represented investors on who have just recently bought units this past summer, and what the cap rates and what the cash flows are on those. So we're using real hard numbers here, not these vague numbers that they like to use in a book. So you might want to go onto BNN, see if you can find it. I felt sorry a bit for the author. He wasn't selling any books after this interview, that's for sure. I think he left that studio with his tail between his legs and really stepped into a hornet's nest, and it was good on BNN to hit him with some questions here. The host knew his stuff, and he was definitely a long-time homeowner. These guys are pretty savvy on BNN. I blogged about it before. If you're a stock investor and you read books on any of the great investors, from Warren Buffett to Peter Lynch to George Soros, if you read any of those books, a lot of them will tell you your first step should be to buy your principal residence, because you can't screw it up. You need a roof over your head. That should be the foundation for financial freedom. I'm Owen Bigland. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.